Hello and welcome back to another episode of WJ Live powered by the Western Journal. I'm George Upper, editor-in-chief of the Western Journal. I'm joined today by supervising features editor Andrew J. Shasha, as well as deputy managing editor Josh Manning. Not joining us today, my white polo, because apparently that memo doesn't go to everybody. I have one. Tommy Bahama makes polos. I could have.
You were left out of that email, George.
Had I known, I wasn't supposed to be on today. Had I known, I would have worn something different. But Michael was supposed to be here. He's out sick. It's okay. The antibiotics and the cream seem to be working, so he'll be back. He'll be back.
Today on the show, we are going to talk a number of Second Amendment issues, including a case coming up before the Supreme Court, as well as some state efforts to counter what appears to be an anti-gun agenda from the Biden administration. Before we get to that, I want to jump in with a story about essentially Vice President Harris being called out by a first-term freshman Republican representative from Texas, Representative Troy Nehls from the 22nd Congressional District down in Texas. It's in the Houston area down there by the Gulf Coast. Now, this guy is really interesting. I did a little homework on Representative Nehls and was confused as to why I hadn't heard of him before, because he is totally our kind of guy. He is a military reservist. He did tours in Bosnia and Afghanistan, and I believe Iraq as well. He's law enforcement, former sheriff. This is exactly the kind of guy that we like to see in office. So I was reading his sort of background and thought, well, why in the world have I never heard of Troy Nehls before? This is perfect, sounds exactly like our kind of guy. Well, he's been in office for since he was, just a few months since he was sworn in. So, but totally seems like our kind of guy. He was on Fox News the other day talking about Kamala Harris and her supposedly being the border czar, although she doesn't seem to be. In fact, we did a story today about her stating that she's not focused on the border. So I don't know what kind of border czar that makes. But he really called her out for the excuses that she's been putting out there for not going to the border. I think we have a brief video clip from that interview of him essentially reading her the riot act for not having been to the border yet. Let's see if we have that video.
Public safety, immigration, small town mayors, and everyone that lives along that southern border, that you are doing a horrible job, you're in complete denial, and you need to fix the southern border. That's what she would hear if she visited it. So she's going to use the excuse, like everything else, COVID.
Yeah, exactly. She doesn't want to hear from the people who are actually sort of the constituents, if you will, at the border patrol, the people who live there, small town mayors, law enforcement, etc. We've all seen the pictures. We've seen kids just jammed into containers. We've seen the folks coming up from New Mexico, probably not from New Mexico, probably from Old Mexico, as well as Central America in their "Hey Biden, let me in" T-shirts. We've seen all of these things. At this point, here's what I think, and this is just my theory. I think the Biden administration is really struggling with the border, trying to figure out what to do, what to say, how to appease the far left and the more moderate parts of their party, and come up with a plan that might actually be able to be passed by a Congress which is not leaning heavily to the left. It's it's a very evenly divided Congress. So, you guys, what do you think? Is there at this point any way for the Biden administration to win politically on the issue of border security and illegal immigration?
Win is a strong word. I think there's a way for them to get cover from the media. They always do. I think they came in, frankly, without a plan at all on their hands. I think that they were pretty assured that, numbers were down, things weren't going to, get completely out of control, and if they did, no one would mind. The media would just say, this is exactly what we wanted. We're giving refugees an opportunity, and to some extent, that is what the media has said. But I don't think they were expecting everyone to turn their eyes to the border when that flood started coming in. And they clearly didn't have anything ready to go. For several weeks, there was nothing going on. And then there's this conversation about Kamala Harris being, the person for the job. They prop her up to do it. And then 3 days later, Biden says, well, she's not actually doing the border. And then the administration keeps saying that she's doing the border, but she doesn't go. So she's absent on the job. She's asleep. And the rest of the administration seems completely uncaring with regard to this issue. Now, in Congress, we've talked about the bill that was presented already, completely stalled out in the first month of the administration. I've heard nothing about it since. They decided to go piecemeal with a couple of smaller resolutions. But at this point, I really don't think there is a win. They didn't get the major bill that they wanted. It was dead on arrival in the House, where they should have gotten far more votes than they were apparently able to whip up behind the scenes.
Right.
And the optics of the actual crisis itself is a disaster. So it's a lose-lose, both politically and operationally.
Josh, is there any way to pull a win out of this one for the Biden administration?
I don't know.
Or even a stalemate?
Well, maybe a stalemate. I don't know. This actually reminds me just a little bit of 2006. Then President Bush had an immigration plan that a lot of people in his party didn't like, and a lot of people on the other side did kind of like. Biden, I think, is realizing, oh boy, we got to do something. And something is, whatever that something is, it is way too much for people on the left in Congress. They want open, porous borders. And the Republicans may be loath to support something that doesn't go all the way, but they probably like something more than nothing.
Well, and they're probably not in any hurry to bail Biden out of this conundrum either.
Well, they're not, and there's a question about how wise that is, given that every day that passes, you have new illegal voters crossing over.
Sure.
The point you made earlier about the photos of kids being jammed into containers. We had kids in cages. Now we have kids in containers. Right. None of that moves me just that much. If you're, it's a heck of a lot better than illegal immigrants were treated probably at any time, other time in the past ever. It's a little cramped, it's a little crowded. That's probably kind of what goes with it. I don't know what the answer is. I do think Biden realizes something has to be done. I don't think they know what to do. They don't want to lose support from the Congress. They know that they are at the mercy of the leftist mob that's out there right now.
Yeah.
And so they're I think they're sort of prisoner to their base, and they don't know what to do either.
I think the problem for Republicans then becomes, you're talking about, is it wise for us to kind of let Biden stew in it? Maybe it feels good, but you have a humanitarian crisis at the border.
Sure.
It's the same crisis that I believed under, the Trump administration when he was saying this is a humanitarian crisis. I completely believe that rhetoric. I feel for the people who are stuck and feel like, they want to come to the United States. You obviously have to empathize with that, whether you think we should let them in.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, the Republicans can't really bite either, because even with Ronald Reagan, he had a fantastic plan for, normalizing relations and getting things together at the border. But even with a Republican president who was very strong on the issue, there wasn't enough at the border in terms of security.
Right.
So he solves the problem, and then 4 decades later, you have another major problem.
It would be neat to see Republicans come out. We had news a couple weeks ago that the administration was looking at finishing some of the wall that
Right.
Trump had started. It would have been very neat to see Republicans come out and say, man, we're behind you 100%.
Yeah.
Not, see,
Yeah.
we told you so. It's very tempting and very enjoyable to do, see, we told you so.
It is.
We've done it here. It would have been really good for a lot of Republicans to get out there and say,
do it.
yep, all right, put our differences aside, let's get this done. And then at least they could have claimed a kind of unity victory. They could have helped Biden. Biden could have given them something they wanted. It would have helped with the crisis a little bit, and it would have left the left out in the cold. But so far, that hasn't happened.
So you guys have both anticipated my next question just a little bit. It's the game I always like to play whenever I show up on WJ Live, whenever K-Kunk, our producer K-Kunk, who's back from vacation today, by the way.
What's her name?
K-Kunk.
K-Kunk. Got it.
That's how she's known in the professional world of video
She
production.
just threw something. Did you
K-Kunk.
hear it? She actually just threw
our-
something in the green room. I think we heard it.
Our producer K-Kunk, when she lets me on the show, it basically insists that I play this game, is basically how that works. She doesn't let me on unless I'm willing to do this. It's called Clueless or Corrupt.
We need a graphic for this game.
Clueless or Corrupt. It basically, here's the question I'm going to pose to you boys. Is it actually possible that the Biden administration is unaware that there is, in fact, a crisis at the southern border, given that pretty much everyone in the administration has by now called it a crisis, even though they've walked it back afterwards? Is it possible that they're unaware that there's a crisis at the southern border? Representative Nels from Texas called this complete denial. Or are they fully aware but cynically ignoring it? Just because of what we've said here, they can't figure out how to engineer a political win on this issue.
You know what? A couple weeks ago when we played this game, it was either Michael or Joe that said, if Kamala Harris is involved, it's corrupt, and if Biden is involved, it's clueless.
That's a really good assessment.
We have hit a point, though, on this issue where even if Kamala Harris is at the forefront of the issue, it's still clueless, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I think that they know. I think that, again, I just don't think they know what they want to do with it. I think that they expected a lot more time to handle this, and they have been put essentially in the crucible with this issue, and they just are too clueless to get out of it.
Josh, you agree with that?
I think I do. That's a good assessment. You know, another term for liberalism in international relations is idealism in the literature. And I mean, maybe that's what this is. Maybe this is a bunch of people who are idealists who they've got this utopian idea of a porous border, and man, if we just let them in, it'll be better for everybody. And they just can't see past the ends of their noses.
So it is that complete denial that Representative Nels refer to.
So you said denial a minute ago. I'm not sure it's that, though. I'm wondering if it's more of an obliviousness. You know, when you're raising kids, it's a remarkable thing kids will do. You can tell them not to touch that, it's hot, and they will almost certainly touch it,
Right.
it's hot.
Right.
And if it's not just blazing hot, they will probably do it again. It's the weirdest thing.
Right.
And that's almost what this looks like. I mean, we've warned them that bad things are happening at the border. They see it, but it's like it doesn't register with them somehow. And maybe that's giving them too much credit. I imagine you folks who are watching are saying you guys are idiots. These people are all corrupt. And they probably are all corrupt.
I don't think we'd argue that.
But I don't know what angle this kind of corruption would get them.
Yeah.
In the long term. And of course, you'd come back and you'd say, well, it gets some votes, but it doesn't get them just that many votes over the course of a week or a month or something. So, and this is just killing them in the media. So
It is.
yeah.
So, Andrew, you mentioned that the Biden administration did not have a plan for the border coming into this. It seems like they do or did have a plan in some other areas, though, including gun control. They came in
Blazing hot.
Yeah, they came in guns a-blazing to control guns. Ironically.
They came in guns blazing, and on this issue, I think I would differ with Josh on the last issue. I think that the Democrats in Congress actually, whether they like it or not, are not for the kind of full left open borders policy that the progressives are for when it comes to immigration. On the issue of gun control, all bets are off. The Democrats are certain on that issue. Unfortunately, we've seen, throughout the last couple of decades that Republicans are actually, in some cases, willing to give far more ground on the issue of guns. I mean, people who will go and talk about red flag laws. I mean, just 2 years ago in 2018, I guess 3 years ago now, Mitch McConnell during the summer had said, red flag laws in light of a couple of major mass shootings. I believe it was in El Paso, Texas, and the one that was in Ohio. And so they give all this ground Fortunately, under the Trump administration, we saw some major gains in terms of the court. The Supreme Court got 3 new justices, all of them, pretty strongly conservative. I mean, you could argue that Brett Kavanaugh is a little bit more of kind of an institutionalist, more in the Roberts line, but there's no question about Neil Gorsuch. He was, the Scalia replacement, absolutely hardliner on originalist issues, and it seems like Amy Coney Barrett, pretty similarly on the circuit, she ruled pretty similarly. Very interestingly, after weeks of hearing that this new court with Amy Coney Barrett has not been bold. This new Roberts court has not been bold enough to take up big issues. Looks like, as of today, they're going to be taking up New York State rifle versus Corlett Keith et al., which is essentially a major Second Amendment case. It is a challenge to the New York State laws that are heavily restrictive with regard to carrying concealed in the state of New York. Now, in most states in the union, carrying is generally, pretty simple. Unfortunately, in 8 or 9 states, it's California, Delaware, Hawaii, Maryland, Massachusetts, New Jersey, Rhode Island, and New York. It's quite a bit of that northeast district there is pretty strict when it comes to the right to carry. You have to not only get your license. To get that license, it actually was, when I was growing up, before I came out here, was one of the challenges was you had to have like some fantastical reason as to why you needed to carry a firearm. You had to, it wasn't just, oh, well, this is my constitutional right, I would like to exercise it. It was, I go to a dangerous place for work and I need this firearm. And so you had to display need. Now, New York has decided that they want to force folks to display the same. Fortunately, those challenges have risen all the way up to the Supreme Court, and it looks like we may get a pretty substantial decision here. People are throwing back to D.C. versus Heller, which in 2008 was the decision that essentially makes it completely permanent and completely acceptable for someone to own a handgun in their home as a personal defense item under the Second Amendment. That kind of gives that Second Amendment coverage to personal self-defense. The look here is that it could expand it to outside of the home now. The Second Amendment does mean personal defense in the home, outside the home, everywhere in the United States if you are a citizen or a person under the jurisdiction of the United States. So, my question for you guys with regard to this case is, first of all, is this actually a kind of a docket response to Biden coming in so hard on gun control? Is it essentially the court signaling, hey, the Roberts Court has been argued to be a little bit, they'd like to punt on some of those more major issues. They don't want to set precedent when they can avoid it. Is this them saying, don't give us a reason to, rule on these major things? You gotta roll back your kind of congressional agenda in this administration. Is it a warning to take up this case?
I think that's a really interesting question. I would not put any sort of maneuvering like that past John Roberts, and as disillusioned as many on the right have been with Chief Justice Roberts, I think for the most part he's had a pretty even hand. I believe I disagreed with his Obamacare decision, which was pivotal, and I think left distaste in the mouths of a lot of conservatives. Yes. I think that a lot of people who don't like him for that reason. But he is a what's the word you used earlier, Andrew? An institutionalist. He is an institutionalist, as Kavanaugh often is. I think it's very ironic that Kavanaugh was the one that everybody
that they fought so
on
hard
the left,
against.
had a cow about, and he's almost as much a big government person as they are, many of them anyway. It would not surprise me to see a Chief Justice Roberts sort of staking his claim, essentially warning the Biden administration that this is not going to go the way you think it's going to go, and so you had better stop, because we don't want, Chief Justice Roberts, don't want to demolish your entire gun control agenda. That's not my desire or my goal, but you're going to force my hand, because if these cases come to the Supreme Court, look who's on it. You don't have a Ruth Bader Ginsburg on here anymore. She's been replaced. Are you even paying attention to that? I think that's a reasonable question to ask.
Josh, what do you think?
I'm not sure if the I guess the Supreme Court's trying to send a signal. I guess they always are. I am not smart enough to understand what those signals are ever. It's neat looking back. If you were depressed about the state of the country and you feel like we're losing the culture wars and we're losing fight after fight, one thing you can look at over the last 20, 30, maybe even 40 years is gun rights and look at what has happened with those. Man, now the right hasn't expanded, but recognition of the right has expanded.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was a kid growing up, we were thinking, okay, I've got a concealed carry weapon, or my dad has got a concealed carry weapon here. What other states can he carry it in? And now that's almost not even a question anymore. Most states have reciprocity. I'm hoping, if I understand this correctly, this may finally fix the shall issue versus may issue, which is this. There's some states where if you apply for a concealed carry permit, the state may issue you the permit. Other states shall issue you the permit. A may issue state is a state that's going to make you state some reasons why you need it, and then the state itself will exercise discretion over whether or not you meet the criteria. Shall issue states are the ones that tend to be gun friendlier, and they say, look, if you meet the requirements on the application, then man, you're going to get your concealed carry permit.
Right.
I'm hoping
it shifts the burden of proof in a
Yes.
sense.
exactly in the direction it should go.
Right.
And so I'm hoping this will fix that. We are seeing it is just an interesting thing to me. We just have won on guns over and over and over and over and over and over again. It is unbelievable. And I haven't spent a lot of time thinking about this, but it's so interesting that conservatives are able to win that one. I mean, just nonstop, almost every time it comes up. Whereas we know how to lose just about everything else. And so what's the difference there? I don't know what the difference there is. We need to think about that some. I'm excited about what could come out of it. I don't know if you're right that Roberts is kind of saying, hey, hold back, keep your powder dry, whatever. If he is saying that, I hope that Biden will completely ignore him because we need to demolish as much of this language as we can. It is the fundamental freedom that makes all the others possible.
I guess one of the ways that we might be able to find out if this is a warning or if this is just a case that was taken up because it was prominent is which way does it go? Obviously, we don't have a crystal ball here, so we can't decide that. But George kind of got at it a little bit. I mean, what do we think? Is this a case where they're going to kind of play procedural and maybe punt and say, in this case, this law gets overturned, but it's not a blanket ruling, it's not a precedent? Or are we going to see precedent ruling on this case?
I mean, if you're asking me, yeah, I think this is precedent ruling. I think it's too fundamental a question regarding the law and too broad, too sweeping. It essentially affects or has the potential to affect every American citizen, right? Every gun-owning citizen, anyway, or any citizen desiring to be a gun owner, and that's just millions and millions and millions of people. So, I mean, Roberts' desire will be to punt. That's always his desire. But I just don't think he can. I don't think he has control of the right-leaning side of that court anymore. No. You've got, essentially 5.5 conservative judges at this point. Depending on how you slice them all up, it comes out something like that, and you need 5. Yeah. So, barring some disaster, somebody recusing themselves, somebody retiring early, something along those lines. Yeah, I think what you get is potentially a very important precedent in gun ownership and gun control in this country.
I have no idea. I've absolutely not. I don't know enough about the Supreme
Josh
Court.
Does not like to predict.
No, well, I will if I feel like I'm qualified to, but I haven't the foggiest idea what's going to happen here. I hope they will move toward precedent. Anytime conservatives have control of the court, they should be attempting to set as much precedent as possible. This idea that we interfere as little as possible is a losing game. When you're playing it with people who play fair and who have the same belief, great. But we're not playing it with people who have the same belief or who play in good faith.
And it
We
hasn't
need
been
to set
played
as
since
much-
Marbury versus Madison.
No,
I mean, the court's role is to make these decisions.
Right, which and I'm not even sure I agree with that. I mean, the court's going to find and the court is going to award itself the ultimate judicial and constitutional superpower. Yeah. It'd be like finding out L. Ron Hubbard actually is God, and that's the central premise of Scientology.
You're not
It's like,
cleared
yeah,
for
of
this
course
level
he
of
did.
intelligence.
Of course he did. Of course he did. Of course he wrote it that way. Yeah. So I don't know. I don't know. We'll see. So that's the Supreme Court dealing with guns. So I want to take you guys to a couple of state level gun discussions. Montana's Governor Greg Gianforte, not to be confused with the way he was addressed by another member of the media as Governor Greg Giantfort. I kid you not. Governor Greg Giantfort.
Giant fort.
Gianforte. He's stepping forward to protect the residents of Montana from Biden's assault on the Second Amendment. On Friday, he signed into law House Bill 258. Bill 258 prohibits state and local law enforcement officials from enforcing any federal ban or regulation on firearms, magazines, and ammunition. It also prohibits the use of state funds to impose federal bans and regulations of these items. We have seen a number of bills like this come forward, and a number of them signed into law. Montana, I think, is the most recent one. And it kind of goes back to what I was talking about a second ago with these, like, another string of victories as far as gun rights go. And the United States is going to look very weird if everything continues on the path, on the trajectory it's at right now, where we'll have these unbelievable green mandates and this horrible onerous federal burden, but everyone will be walking around with fully automatic shotguns. And if you give me the shotguns, I might be willing to give you the other. But it is remarkable how we are seeing this happen across the country. And and I'm not positive what to make of that, other than that Americans in flyover country who know that the Electoral College is in danger, who know that I think proportional representation in the Senate is in danger. They know that 50 states are in danger. We've already got the D.C. statehood bill. I think they are shoring up really kind of the ultimate line of defense that they've got. And we're seeing this happen in other states too. So do you guys think this is going to spread? We're going to see more of this?
Well, we've seen it elsewhere, right? Arizona passed a not dissimilar law not all that long ago. Who else tried to when it was vetoed? Arkansas? Was it
Arkansas did, and I want to talk about that in a second. That's an interesting case.
I knew there was another one so we'll get to that. But the problem is, as it so often is, money. State legislatures, state governors are so in love with federal tax dollars that and every federal dollar comes with some sort of string attached to it. So regardless of what the citizens of that state want or believe, you have leaders who should know better, essentially allowing themselves to be bought, which is what I would argue happened in Arkansas, by federal money. And the federal government can just produce as much money as it wants. They can tax for it, they can print it, they can do whatever they want. So I don't know that it's true that every man has his price, but I think that most men do. Yeah. And whatever that price is, the federal government is capable of meeting it. So I think, unfortunately, I think we may have seen as much of this action at the state level as we're going to, at least for the time being.
Yeah, this is for once my my Homeland Security degree coming in clutch here with a little bit of knowledge. I mean,
Did you know you had a college degree?
does anyone know I have a college
didn't
degree?
realize He'd even been to college.
These interstate, or I guess state-federal partnerships kind of ballooned out of 2001 with September 11th, and unfortunately they have, like George is talking about here, they have taken over everything. I mean, the Constitution says that, in the 10th Amendment, that any power not reserved for the federal government in that document is given back over to the states. Now, that means the states can help if they want. If the federal government can do anything with the power that it chooses to do, and it can overshadow all of the state powers if it chooses with the powers that it's been given. The states don't have to help with that, but they can sure be coerced into doing with that money. And so we have, I think, flyover country, we might see it grow, Josh. I think there could be, I would disagree with George in that I don't think that it's dead here. I think a couple more states might pull it off, but I think that the coasts aren't going to pull for it.
Yeah.
I think
Well,
even some of the
do it in
bigger
the first
Republican
place.
states won't pull for it because they need emergency funding, which comes in swaths from those state partnerships. And so, the growth of it has a maximum boundary that's already been set at the very least.
So it wasn't just 9/11 that started that partnership. I remember, and this might be the day I became a conservative, to be honest with you. And I don't remember how old I was, but I was young. New Hampshire was the last state in the union with an 18-year-old drinking age.
Yep.
I think it was New Hampshire.
Highway money.
Yeah, exactly. And the federal government didn't like that, and they said, no, it's going to be 21, or we're not giving you your highway money. Congress passed a law that said, we have all this highway money, and it goes to every state as long as they have a drinking age of 21. And I'd have to go back and look and see when that was, but I feel like I was 12, maybe, something like that. But I remember hearing that news going, well, that's a grift. Who came up with that grift? That's not supposed to work that way. And truly, it was a seminal moment of me going, that just feels like an abuse of power. Like, the states are supposed to be able to do what the states want, what they think is best for their people. And the federal government's just coming in saying, nope, we like it this way.
So young George is like, I had 6 years and now I got 9 years?
Yeah.
What is this?
Yeah, because I totally waited till I was 21. So, I mean, that's tale as old as time, kind of. Rome bribed the colonies, too. I mean, that's not new.
So the Arkansas bill, and I was very critical. I'm from Arkansas. I was very critical of Governor Hutchinson until I did a little bit more research on it. Now, I absolutely love my home state. After reading his articulation for why he vetoed it, I do understand why he vetoed it. And he vetoed it because of a trait my home state has, which I love.
Do you agree with it, or do you understand it?
I probably agree with it. But just barely, hang on. So here's the deal. The Arkansas bill specifically states that federal laws and regulations, including the National Firearms Act and the Gun Control Act of 1968, are null and void. The bill does not provide any exception for provisions of those laws concerning unlawful possession by violent criminals. So, I'm torn on this, folks. The idea of doing away with the National Firearms Act, just delightful. Delightful to me. I'm not positive I'm ready for my home state to simply say, okay, we're saying it's null and void. And if any state actors act to help the federal government, then they're breaking the law too.
Right.
That is a problem. Now, what I love is that the Senate in my home state decided we are going to nullify the National Firearms Act. I absolutely love that. Would love to see that go away on the national level. Get rid of it.
Absolutely.
I do understand why Hutchinson vetoed it. What I wish he would have done is in the veto letter come out and said, listen, here is what I want you to – exactly.
Yep.
This is what I'm waiting to sign, guys. And, man, put as many teeth in it as you can. But at the end of the day, if there's a fugitive from federal justice in Saline County, we we probably want our law enforcement officers to be able to go after him too.
Yeah.
I mean,
right.
not to mention, even that it becomes a resource problem. You have then you pass that law and you're begging for a U.S. versus Arkansas, essentially, at the Supreme Court, major case, and that's a ton of resources for your state attorney general to have to be dealing with this major U.S. prosecution of my whole state for saying that this law on the books at the federal level is not constitutional.
Yeah, and I would love. I mean, we may get there. I would absolutely love to see the NFA just
Terminated,
destroyed. I would absolutely love
You
to
know,
see it go down in flames.
Arkansas could
don't know
probably
if this
do
is the way to do it.
private fundraising to fund that.
They probably could.
Yeah.
the whole
They probably
state.
could. Not from the
Well,
NRA, apparently. They don't have any money, but there are enough gun owners in this country who recognize the importance of that as national precedent,
You know, one of the things that Biden is going after, two of the biggies they're going after, ghost guns, this idea of guns that are privately assembled and then used. I'm not sure a ghost gun has ever been used in a mass shooting. As far as I know, it has.
The only people
But
I
then-
know of who trade in ghost guns are gunsmiths, who are the most legal, the most law-abiding gun owners there are. They're the most
it's a
safety
hobby.
conscious. They're, those folks are down to crossing every T, dotting every I.
Yeah, and I think they like to talk about 3D printed guns and that sort of stuff. I've got a buddy who actually
spooky
messes
and
with that.
scary.
It is spooky and scary, but man, those are not the guns you go on a shooting spree with. I promise you that.
I'd
But
be
the-
afraid it would blow up in my hand.
The other thing they're going after is the arm brace deal.
Yeah.
So if you don't know this, you've heard about this. There are these arm braces that you can actually kind of tuck up into your. They go on pistols. They go on AR-15 pistols, and you can kind of tuck the brace up here and shoot kind of like it's a rifle.
If you've ever seen The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, Lee Van Cleef has one. He turns his revolver into a fake rifle early on in the film.
Yeah, and so as far as I know, there's never been an AR-15 pistol used in any of these heinous crimes, and there certainly could be. But the deal is, the brace doesn't actually change anything. The brace adds about that much material to the butt of the weapon, and that's it. You can still shoulder it just fine the regular way. I've got one. I'll bring it in one day and show you. But that's what the Biden administration is going for. They're going after those.
Maybe they think that's the thing they can win.
Maybe so. I don't know. And so, but that kind of brings us full circle back to is it corruption or is it
sheer
just
stupidity.
Cluelessness.
Yeah, just cluelessness. And I'm not sure. I really kind of think, based on the rhetoric we see from leftist lawmakers when they get up and talk, I think of people like Ted Lieu.
Right.
They really are clueless about this
The
stuff. And maybe
famous
they
Ghost
think.
Gun press conference, still one of my favorite clips of all time.
Yeah,
30 clips per second or whatever it was.
30
he
clip
said
round
they
mag.
fired.
I don't know. Was that Ted? Was that Ted
No,
who
I
said
don't
it?
know.
Somebody
It was a
else.
city council.
Ted
Never
has
held a
said
gun in
something
their
like
hands
that.
in their
No,
lives.
clearly.
There's that
Clearly.
great image of Diane. I think it was Diane Feinstein. It might have been Barbara Boxer, but I think it was Feinstein. She was holding an AK style rifle, trying to demonstrate how dangerous it was. And she's got her finger there on the
trigger.
trigger.
Nice.
Just
They have no clue.
They have no clue what.
No clue.
Absolutely no clue what they're doing. But okay. Little progress for gun rights in America. This is good.
We'll take what we can get.
We will take it.
And that is about the time that we have today. Thank you so much for joining us here on WJ Live, powered by the Western Journal. If you're watching us on YouTube, we ask that you would go ahead and click that subscribe button and the bell next to it so that you're notified every time a new episode comes out. YouTube doesn't want to tell you when a new episode comes out, so that's the best we can do to help get that information into your hands. They don't want you watching us at all. But it does us a good deal of good when you do that. We know there are plenty of people who watch us every day who are not subscribed to the show, so you really help us out by subscribing. Thank you for being here. We appreciate all of your comments, your kind remarks, your emails that we get every day here. We'll see you again every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday here at 2 p.m. Eastern, 5 p.m. Pacific, except not me for the next 2 weeks, because me and my white polo are going on vacation. So I'll see you in a couple of weeks. Guys, take care. Stay safe.
Which is essentially a world fair, which
Time to go.
and she was also a historic.
got an audio version too.
And she was also historic for being the first kind of living trademark of the advertising